Welcome to the beginning of the 2021 spring semester. It is good to be together again, to have students back on our campuses, and to have colleagues, faculty, and staff with us as well. The focus of today's convocation is going to be having a successful spring semester. The spring semester we know is going to be a lot like the fall. We're going to be doing things this semester as we did in the fall, things like washing our hands and maintaining social distancing, wearing our masks. The vaccines are coming, we know, but we also know that they probably won't be here soon enough to make a big difference in what our spring experience will be. So I want to talk today and share with you today some of the ways that we can have a successful spring semester. The title for today's convo is Fired Up for Success. And in one sense, I mean being enthusiastic about the spring and being enthusiastic about the things that we have ahead of us. But I also mean fired in the sense of being tempered, of being tested, of being fired in a kiln, as it were, by the experiences that we've already had this year, the things that we've lived through and worked through this last fall. Renee and I love to collect pottery. When we travel, we like to visit potters in their studios and see how they do their work. This coffee cup, for example, is one of the things that we've bought on our travels. I was in a studio one time and I saw this, and it caught my attention, and I asked the potter, "What is this thing?" It didn't look like a piece of art, and she explained that these are called witness cones. Witness cones. They're actually called pyrometric cones, and they're used to test the temperature in a kiln and the length of time that a kiln has been at that temperature. So each of these cones is designed to lean over at a different temperature and over a longer period of time. So the one that's bent over the first bends over at a lower temperature, and as the temperature gets hotter, you get a second one that keels over, and then the third begins to bend at the time that the kiln has been at a particular temperature for a particular length of time. That time plus temperature is called heat work, and they're used to witness the conditions in the kiln. Those terms, witness and heat work, are really appropriate for what we've been experiencing during this pandemic. We have been in a kiln of sorts this year, and sometimes tested to our limits, and sometimes it feels like we've been pushed beyond our limits. And how we've come through all of that bears witness to our ability to withstand the temperature and the time of the moment through which we're living. So one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what's something that you know today that you wish you had known or would have liked to have known half of your lifetime ago or half of your career ago, right? So for you as a college student, it might be, what's something that you know today that you wish you had known when you started college? Or to look even further back, what's something that you know today that you wish you had known when you started high school? You would benefit from the wisdom of your experiences over those years. So what this convo is about is sharing with you what I've heard from students and colleagues when I asked them that question. What is something that you know today from your experience in the fall that will help us be successful, will help you be successful as we work through this spring together? I gave each of the people that I asked 30 seconds to share a lesson or an insight from the fall that they're going to bring to their work at Manchester this spring. And these are among the answers that you're going to hear in the responses. Connect with and lean on others, especially the people that you love. Ask for help. Share your stories. Get to know each other and your faculty. Do something you love. Control what you can control and be prepared for the unexpected. Stay motivated to finish the semester strong, and especially, over and over you will hear, take care of yourself. Libby Krebs, Celia Cook Huffman, Caelan Williams, and Alexis Young talk about connecting with others, taking care of yourself, and being willing to ask for help.
Hi, I'm Libby Krebs, and something I learned this fall was that I was easily caught up in stress. Stress about homework, stress about COVID, and all the things that are happening in the world around us. But I remembered something that Professor Heather Schilling told my FYS class last year. You will get things done, but first focus on the things and the people that matter the most to you, and the world will become a lot less stressful place. And I hope to use that same mentality this spring.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Spring 2021. I come from a family heritage that's pretty stoic. In times of crisis, we just keep going and shove our emotions down. These are not great coping skills for a pandemic, so I've tried to develop some new ones. One has been to be really intentional about reaching out, leaning into, and leaning on my community. The other is to make sure that I get enough rest. Sometimes this means getting enough sleep. Other times it means I just remember to take time to breathe, maybe do a little yoga. My new coping strategies are a bit of a yin and a yang. One is reaching out, and the other is making sure that I take time for self-care.
Something I was able to do in the fall semester that made me successful was obtain the resources that Manchester had available. So I got to seek counseling, which allowed a professional to help me walk me through this very uncertain semester, and that's something I'm truly grateful for.
I learned to ask for help in a semester, or really a summer, that was filled with uncertainty and changes, one that caused a new kind of stress. Allowing myself to ask for help was vital to my success and my sanity. As someone who has spent my career at MU serving campus events, where last-minute changes are standard and being flexible is a requirement, this semester required a whole new level of adaptability. It wasn't about events anymore, it was adapting to national, state, and local mandates that were intended to keep our campus community safe and our students on campus as long as possible. I've spent the first year of my new role at MU as an assistant vice president constantly changing because of the pandemic. The actions we took last semester to protect the campus were a priority, and many tasks would not have happened if I had not resolved that it's okay to ask for help. Thankfully, I'm surrounded by my family, friends, coworkers, and team members who stepped to the occasion to lend a hand.
Another lesson that was shared by several people is to manage the things that you can. Kevin Lake puts it this way. He says, take it one match at a time. Elizabeth Allred suggests setting a regular routine. And Vaibhav Mundra says, focus on what you can control.
One lesson that we've really embraced this past fall and will carry us through to the spring is the notion of controlling what you can control. In wrestling speak, we think about this as one match at a time. We know we can control our effort, our attitude, our determination, and if we put all our energies into the task at hand, we can feel comfortable knowing there's an amazing team of support staff, administrators, university officials that are going to help support those efforts and make decisions that are going to carry us through this difficult time. So that when we get to the other side, we can learn and grow at Manchester and enjoy this time.
A few things I did last semester that helped me be successful. One was creating a regular routine, even if I didn't have to get out. And the second was utilizing my Canvas calendar and even my own planner to know when I had Zoom meetings or Zoom classes.
2020 was a challenging year for all of us. We all would have learned something during the pandemic. For me, the learnings are adaptability and focusing on things which I can control. This has helped me to handle the uncertain times of COVID.
Mason Kniola says the same thing, but he comes at it from a different direction. Mason says, if you manage what you can, you'll be prepared for the unexpected.
One thing I learned from the fall that will help me be successful in the spring is that you should plan for your unknowns. You have your knowns and your unknowns. Your knowns are things like classes, assignments, quizzes, and events. Your unknowns are things that happen unexpectedly and can happen at any time. When you plan out your knowns to the best of your ability, it helps you prepare for those unknowns.
Several people suggested investing time in something you love, something that keeps you centered. Beth Schultz talks about music. Beth Driscoll talks about daily prayer. And Jessica Montalvo reminds us that no one size fits all.
Something that I became aware of in the fall that has impacted my spring semester is self-care. So making good choices for myself, making sure that I'm exercising, that I'm making good food choices, that I'm staying connected, even with Zoom, with family and friends, or hobbies. I enjoy a cappella singing, and I stay connected with a group out of Chicago. Every week we meet and sing and learn new music. So self-care is really important, and I think it's important to make that a priority.
To help me cope through the fall and into spring, I recommitted myself to daily prayer. I found this great book by Matthew Kelly. I heard God laugh. Then I bought tons of copies and I give them away. So if anybody would like one, I will give them away for free until they're gone. But what I have found is when I center myself in the morning with daily prayer, I can then bring my best self to work. And then I know that the students then benefit, as does the university. So what I did in this fall and what I'm going to continue to do in the spring is commit myself to daily prayer.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Montalvo, and I'm the Director of Student Services for Pharmacy Programs on the Fort Wayne campus. You know, one of the biggest things that helped me to be successful last semester was I took the time for self-care. Whatever that looks like for you, setting aside maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour throughout the week, make sure to take time for yourself in doing something that you love.
Did you catch the book offer? Professor Driscoll's office is on the second floor of the Chinworth Center if you're interested, and I encourage you to go over and take her up on that offer of a free book. Parth Patel is a fourth-year student in the pharmacy program and is about to graduate, but his advice to stay strong, finish strong this semester is advice that applies to all of us.
How to be successful in spring. For me, knowing that I get my degree in May has kept me very motivated to finish strong. And I know last year was a very trying time for a lot of us, but having my family and my friends as my support system has kept it together for me. My advice for this upcoming semester would be to stay connected, stay together. I know it's difficult still, but we'll get through this if we just have each other's backs.
I know from hearing your stories that the pandemic has landed on each of us very differently. Kyle Watson, among other things, suggests extending grace to one another. And Megan Polonaise, despite personal loss in her family, offers encouraging words of hope.
One of the things that I learned in the fall that I am going to use again in the spring is just how to use a lot of the technology available to us to deliver content, especially in a subject like chemistry, which involves us writing things out in real time. Being able to do that, especially for students who are remote, was really beneficial. I also learned, honestly, that a lot of us struggled. And so just giving myself and my students grace when everybody is just trying their best is something that was really helpful as well.
COVID-19 affected us all tremendously and in different ways. Some lost jobs, others lost family members. Speaking as someone who lost a family member, for me, what I'm taking forward into the future is that value of the present and valuing telling my loved ones that they mean a lot to me and that they matter, because you truly never know when it will be your last moment with them. You don't value a moment until it becomes a memory. Trust me, I know. And for my immediate family, because they're in a different country, it was especially hard for me because I couldn't see them because of travel restrictions. And so moving forward, I'm holding on to hope that we will see each other again in the future, hope for a better future for us all and that we beat this thing. And so I'm doing my part to flatten the curve by wearing my mask, social distancing, as well as washing my hands. And I encourage you to do the same, because we can't beat this unless we do it together.
What this past fall taught me the most was how important it is to express gratitude whenever possible. This upcoming spring is likely going to be just as challenging as the last. But regardless of how many challenges that we might face, I want to make sure that I take every opportunity possible to tell my friends, colleagues, and my students how grateful I am for them.
Jonathan Watson and Dave McGrady remind us that we can immerse ourselves in our classes, both in the content of those courses and the relationships with our classmates. Our classes give us the opportunity to make new connections, and they transport us beyond where we are right now.
What I learned this fall, or rather was reminded of, was the power of literature and the good company of story. Writers and readers have always welcomed solitude, but that idea of isolation is certainly pushed by the experience of quarantine. I thought I saw in most instances a more visceral, charged response to the assigned readings this fall in quarantine students, and in all students for that matter. When things fall away, shift, change abruptly, we look for answers, for activities that can center us. Literature can do that. Literature is also time travel. It is transporting, not only in the sense of escape, but in the sense of journeying, acquiring wisdom and compassion through experience. So when we are confined, when we are limited by the circumstances of the pandemic, we can still break on through to the other side, as Jim Morrison and the Doors would say. This spring, I'll continue to time travel with students. In my Literary Ireland class, I'll be headed to the potato famine of 19th century Ireland and to the tenements of Dublin. In my Romantics and Victorians class, I'll be traveling through Mary Shelley's Gothic Switzerland with Frankenstein. Better bring my walking stick. Hope to see some of you there.
What I learned was to take the time to get to know my students. I taught face-to-face primarily in the fall, but in January term, I met with each of my students in financial responsibility for 15 minutes individually to get to know them. I hadn't had them in class before. Very inspirational. Love to hear about their career aspirations, and I left that day very energized about teaching that class during January.
Now, I don't have any tattoos, but I may just get one with the insight that Josue Castro offers us. Without adversities, he says, life wouldn't be life.
Something that I learned in this fall semester so I can be successful in the spring semester coming up is that I learned how to overcome adversity, both personally and educational. Now, without adversities, life wouldn't be life. You know, we got to learn how to overcome adversities to be able to succeed in life as well as education, because we all know that, you know, there's always trials. So I think that's what I learned.
Josue's comment is a reminder that life is about learning to stay standing in the face of high temperatures, especially over a long period of time. How we get through this spring semester, this pandemic, will bear witness to our individual and especially our collective strength. We are all fired up for success this semester. We can and we will do it together. I'm going to give Benson Onyeji the last word today. Benson is about to retire after more than 30 years of teaching at Manchester. I offered Benson the same 30 seconds to share his thoughts and insights, but I got a lot more than that. As Benson said, he's been here over 3 decades, and he can pretty much do what he wants to, and I'm not going to argue. So, I'm glad he shared what you're about to hear. Teaching, he says, and I would add learning, requires passion, commitment, courage, and compassion. You have to be intentional and be prepared to do your best. You have to go to class every day and be engaged in every discussion. In other words, throw yourself into this semester. Have a great spring. And now, Benson, over to you for the final word. You've earned it.
My name is Benson Onyeji, Professor of Political Science and Director of the International Studies Program here at Manchester University. When President Dave and I met through Zoom 3 weeks ago, he asked me a simple question. What is something you learned or did last fall that will help you to be successful this spring? I jumped right into it as if I was waiting for someone to ask me to tell my story. I spoke for 10 minutes. A few days later, he invited me to participate in this program today. This time, he gave me only 3 seconds. Oh, yeah, right. I accepted the invitation because I enjoy teaching and like any opportunity to talk about my pedagogy. For me, teaching is an art. It requires passion and commitment, courage and compassion. That is treating others the way you would like to be treated, wearing the other's shoes, or letting oneself to be touched by others' pain, as Pope Francis recently stated. One, as an art, I went beyond providing my students with outlines of my lectures. I actually wrote detailed lecture notes for each topic area, the same way I would deliver my lectures if I were doing face-to-face learning. Preparing those lecture notes took a lot of my time. I worked through until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the night, thanks to COVID pandemic, which locked me down. Writing the lecture notes compensated in helping me to cope with the isolation that came with COVID-19. I made the lecture notes available to my students before every class sitting. These notes made a whole lot of difference because they help students to deal with the difficult tests and reading materials, and thus help to resolve any ambiguity or confusion that may result even from listening or understanding me. Two, I had the courage to do what most of my colleagues do not do. I made attendance a requirement. I did not have much attendance problem as a result. Instead, I had perfect attendance in most instances. Why? You will actually fail if you do not attend classes or choose to stay in your dorm room when you should be doing the main business you came to the university to do. What I did was offer students enough incentive to come to class. Students remain engaged with my lectures, and usually my lectures go between 15 to 20 minutes. Students remain engaged with the interactive class activities, mainly the simulations, the debates, and discussions, which they receive grades for their participation. You cannot receive these grades if you are not in class and participating actively in those activities. I was gratified that students love the lecture notes mostly and look forward to attending classes, especially during the days we have discussion on current events. The drama of the 2020 presidential election caused a lot of excitement in class. The important lesson I learned is that students learned from me, from my lecture notes, which provided illustrations that helped them to relate to real life situations, allowed them to apply theory to concrete situations, and above all, they learned from each other. I was happy each time I had a student submit that they have changed their opinions or views due to what they heard from their classmates. I will still keep my attendance policy this spring semester. 3, although I pride myself as a nice guy and student-centered, friendly professor, last semester, I implemented this quality with a tangible measure of intentionality. I gave students a lot of latitude to do makeups and all that. Additionally, I gave open book objective exams, which encouraged them to now read the textbook and other reading materials they would have otherwise skipped. They learned better by connecting the text, the lectures, and discussions. For the final exam, I did something more profound. I asked students to write no more than 1 page about one lesson they learned in the class during the semester. The question was simple, just like the kind President Dave asked me. That was another reason I jumped to accept his invitation, because I had just asked my students similar questions for their final exam. I liked what I did because such a reflection paper provides students the opportunity to have a voice in the learning process. In summary, I plan to repeat the things that worked best for me last semester. 1, enhance the learning process by providing students with detailed lecture notes. 2, encourage and incentivize class discussion and class attendance. 3, pose simple questions, including open book exams, and continue to provide friendly and conducive pedagogical environment, which allows students to have a voice in the learning process. I must submit, though, that I actually enjoy teaching remotely and would like to do it again, but I will not trade it with the traditional in-class, face-to-face, which I have done for over 3 decades. Thank you.